Hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. I hope everyone's healthy and doing as best as can be expected. I miss you all, and hopefully, I'll get to see you all sooner rather than later, and things will get back to normal. But I did enjoy looking at your presentations from last week. Everyone did a nice job with their PowerPoints and sharing their thoughts and opinions of how the theories connect to the classroom. So I'll be grading those over the next couple days, and we'll be posting your feedback and grades. This week we're on Module 11. I thought I would make a video just to be able to provide a little bit more instruction, go along with the PowerPoints and the information that's posted on D2L. But this week, I'd like for you to read Chapter 7, which is about effective discipline through communication, and Chapter 10, which is about punishment versus discipline. So if you scroll down on our module for this week, you'll see the PowerPoint for this week. I've already downloaded it here, so I can bring that up so I can go over the PowerPoint with you. Just I had a warm up to get us started. It's been a few weeks ago now, but we were talking about 10 ways that teachers can model desirable behaviors to children. So you wrote those down. So hopefully a few things like having a positive attitude, communicating with them, being respectful of their opinions, listening to them came to your mind as you thought of that question. To get us started on Chapter 10, I put on the PowerPoint a few phrases that hopefully you haven't heard teachers say those things, but things like get to work, young man, or no recess until that paper's finished. Hopefully you're not hearing those types of things because those statements actually have a very negative impact on the child's behavior. Usually if a teacher says those type of phrases, it causes children to do the exact opposite of what they're trying to get them to do. So today we're going to look at how we can communicate more effectively with children. So how we talk to children makes a big difference in whether or not they listen to us. I think we would all agree with that, whether you're talking to a child as their teacher or their parent or just as an adult in their life. How we talk to them really makes a big difference in how they listen and receive what we say. But of course, that's true with adults as well. How we talk to adults is going to make a difference as to how that adult interprets us or perceives us. So the author of our text talks about 3 common areas that teachers struggle with, that a lot of times teachers don't even realize it, but just in their conversations with children, it comes across as that they're criticizing or lecturing to them, or that they're issuing more orders or demands. Oops. Oh, what happened here? Or that it's just very inauthentic communication, that the teacher's not really listening and is more of just passive listening, which we talked about that the other week. So I have a discussion board for you to reply to this week, and your first question on the discussion board is talking about these 3 areas. So please take a look and read over those in your book and then reflect on those in the discussion board. In the text, it gives you some examples of each one and how to fix it, like what you can do as an alternative to falling into the trap of using those things. A good alternative is to use iMessages, which we talked about iMessages a couple weeks ago. But when we're upset about a situation or the children are upset about a situation, it's good to teach them how to use iMessages. So in this chapter, the author does a good job of going over what iMessages are and how we can use them. And we talked about iMessages in class before. Another important thing we can do to communicate effectively with children is to listen to them. Maybe one of the reasons children do not listen to adults is because adults do not really listen to children. I think a lot of times adults try to brush off the children's feelings or distract them with something else, like maybe a child is upset about something, and instead of really trying to listen to the child and figure out what the child is upset about, an adult might say, if you stop talking, I'll go get you a cookie, or if you stop crying, I'll go get you a cookie. But the child probably has a legitimate reason that they're upset or crying. So instead of just trying to distract them, we need to figure out what it is they're upset about so we can fix it. Sometimes adults are so busy telling children what to do, they're not really listening to what the child says. Sometimes adults are really quick to come up with reasons as to why something is the child's fault. And sometimes adults like to talk about themselves. So sometimes adults are too busy talking about themselves to really stop and listen or focus on what the child is saying. So a better option to practice is reflective thinking or reflective listening. So reflective listening is first restating or validating the concern of the other person, in this case the child. It's a wonderful method to make sure you have the correct interpretation of what the speaker is saying. And then it also allows you to show the child that you care and are really going to try to find out what's going on. So just be careful not to use this as an opportunity to give the child advice, because it really is their problem. If it was your problem or something you were upset about, you'd give I messages. But teaching children to reflective listen is really a great strategy we can provide them to how to solve their own problems. So speaking of, a lot of schools are teaching children how to resolve conflict. Schools might use a program like PBS, Behavior Management System. I know the school my son goes to uses second step curriculum. Some schools use a program called Don't Laugh at Me. Other schools may incorporate children's literature where they're trying to teach children conflict resolution through using children's books. But conflict resolution is a great way to teach children how to solve conflicts between themselves, their peers, but also through adults as well. So this screen is some ideas that actually was taken from the second step program. So in the back you see the blue bullets. That's an example of a poster that comes with second step to teach children how to solve a problem. They're supposed to think about what is the problem, what are some ways they can solve it, what's the best alternative out of those methods, or what's the best way, then try it and see what happens. Another idea is to teach them to identify the problem, brainstorm the solutions, make a choice, then implement the plan and evaluate the plan. So it's basically saying the same thing. So that was just a real quick review of Chapter 7, but please take the time to read it in your textbook because it's got a lot more details and information than what I can share in this video. So Chapter 10 is about punishment versus discipline. So start off by reviewing to see how you would define discipline. How would you define discipline? In class I would be asking you these and making everyone share. How would you define punishment? And then how would you compare discipline and punishment? So that's actually the basis of the second question that's in your discussion board for this week. So basically, discipline, and I feel like we've talked about this before in class as well, contains the word disciple. A disciple is a willing follower or someone who is happy to respond to your requests and demands because you've won that person's trust and confidence. If you obtain children's compliance through bribery, threats, or intimidation, then they are not your disciples. So what effects do you think punishment or negative discipline could have on a child? Well, actually, teachers or parents who use discipline, negative discipline or punishment, are more likely to create anger and aggression issues in the child, damage to the relationships, damages the child's self-esteem, creates fear within the child. They've missed a lot of opportunities for learning. Punishment does not create critical thinking or inner critical thinking skills or inner control within the child, and it's actually based on deceitfulness as well. So why do some people use punishment? Well, sometimes it's faster. Sometimes an adult has stress on their life, and so because of the stress they're under, they're more likely to use punishment. They don't really realize what they're doing is punishment, or maybe they just simply don't know how to effective discipline because they're acting or doing what the adults in their lives did to them when they were a child. So maybe it's what they've seen. Okay. So Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Like everyone else, children have needs, and to get their needs met, they act or behave. I think we all agree with that, right? Children don't misbehave, they simply behave to get their needs met. I've seen this firsthand a lot of times. A child might be demonstrating a behavior that a teacher or a parent or an adult might think is inappropriate or misbehavior, when really to the child they thought it was a solution to their problem and didn't really realize it might come across as something that they were doing negative. So there's a list of feelings here on the PowerPoint. Have you ever been hungry or tired or cold or frustrated or angry? What did you do about it? You probably vented to a friend, or you probably took action to get those needs met, right? Children can't always take action on their own to get their needs met, or if they do, they get in trouble. So I know a lot of times we joke that we might not be the easiest person to get along with if we're hungry, and children experience the same thing. So a child who's coming to school hungry or tired or cold might be grumpy first thing before they even set foot in the classroom, and it's because of these feelings and issues that they're already struggling with. So here on the PowerPoint, you have some factors affecting children's behavior. You can read those yourself. I don't need to read those over to you. But what type of behavior do you think a child would exhibit if they were frustrated or bored, or they were worried about things going on with a family member, or maybe they just had an allergy that was making them just feel so drained and miserable, like a seasonal allergy, or maybe a medication that they were taking was making them fall asleep. So we need to think about these factors that affect children's behavior so that we make sure that we're responding appropriately to them. So you've probably seen this before, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So remember when we've talked about this theory before, that Maslow says that we cannot reach our fullest potential in life unless all of our needs are met. So what does this have to do with our discussion on discipline? Well, remember, children will not be able to reach their fullest potential until their needs are met in our classroom. So we can't ask them to perform at their optimal level if they're scared or hungry or their basic needs aren't being met. I remember I was teaching a class one time, and in our college classroom, we heard something over the ceiling tiles. It kind of sounded like this, and it was running back and forth over the ceiling tiles, and a student said they thought it was a rat. And so that was enough to invoke panic in the classroom, and everyone's scared that there was a rat in the ceiling. And whenever we heard the movement run back and forth, people were just scared. They were jumping out of their seats. They wanted to leave the room. So there was no way I was going to be able to continue to teach class effectively because everyone was scared for their personal safety. So we ended up having to end class a little early, and I had to give my students an alternative assignment that they could do once they left the classroom, because no more learning was going to take place because everyone was scared. Well, I'm happy to say administration came, they removed a ceiling tile, and it actually was a bird. There was a bird that had gone in through the eaves of the building, and they were able to safely remove the bird. So it definitely was not a rat. Okay. So Harry Wong, he says the number one problem in the classroom is not discipline, it's a lack of procedures and routines. And if you make the work interesting, the discipline will take care of itself. So you may agree or not agree with that statement, but it gives you something to think about. I think a lot of times teachers who expect children to sit for an extended period of time or do worksheets, they might have more issues with discipline than teachers who allow children to get up and move and do more hands-on activities. Because if you keep the children engaged and moving and interested, you will be able to keep their attention span longer. So here's our last question. It says, how would you explain to someone the difference between punishment and discipline by relating it to moral autonomy? So moral autonomy means independence. So I have included this in your discussion board for this week. How would you explain to someone the difference between punishment and discipline, and which one it does a better job at promoting independence with the children? to the children. So if we go back here to our D2L, if you scroll down, here's your discussion board. So I've included some questions from chapter 7 and some questions from chapter 10. Please reply and answer both those questions.